Shalom. First and foremost, I'm going to start out by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakak, Wadash. Yahweh is the name of the Heavenly Father, meaning He is, He exists, He to be, Ba'in Hada, Sham name. Yahweh Shai being the name of the only begotten Son, meaning He delivers, He saves, Rakak, Wadash, Holy Spirit. Double honors to the apostles and elders, great millstone, their well, peace, and blessings to the elected in nation Israel. Back at it again when I listen to the spirit of power. Yahweh Shemashai, Logan's lesson is edifying. I'm the brother out of Juan, just getting straight to it through the spirit. It's another edition of Life on Earth. Okay, and I'm going to just go ahead and entitle this one for the week. It says, this is from CBS News. It says stocks tumble for fifth week amid Iran war rising oil costs. And this is from Friday, March 27, 2026. Stocks tumbled on Friday amid the uncertainty in Iran, marking the fifth consecutive week of declines. It is the longest stretch of weekly losses in nearly 4 years. CBS News business contributor Javier David has more. Stocks came into 2026 riding AI momentum, a more stable trade environment, and hopes for lower interest rates. The S&P 500 hit a record high in late January. Bear with me. It says with 2 trading days left in the first quarter, the situation looks significantly more challenging. The stock market looks broken and is far from clear as how to fix it. The S&P 500 GSPC is down over 7% for the year. The Nasdaq, which is IXIC, is in correction territory. The VIX, known as the Wall Street's Fear Index, is trading at its highest level in a year, cresting the 30 mark. Bond yields are soaring. Gold is off $500 from its record high reached in January. Bitcoin is languishing near 65,000. International stocks are underperforming U.S. stocks once again. And markets have taken the possibility of rate cuts this year completely off the table. A rate hike in 2026 now seems more likely than a cut. Geopolitical headlines continue to overwhelm the news flow, but little this week seemed to arc toward either outcome on the energy front, and experts from the inside the industry still think the risks from this conflict are being understated by markets. For most of the past 3 years, stock market bulls have had multiple levers to pull to make their case. AI spending, earnings growth, and lower rates chief among them. In 2026, these catalysts have lost their juice, and so many of the new developments crossing investors' radars, software getting replaced by AI agents, private credit funds gating redemptions, have simply added to a growing list of negativities. There is a Warren Buffett quote for every market environment. Many readers breezing through this gloomy summary of the market will be quick to pull one of his most famous, "Be greedy when others are fearful." On Thursday, one of our favorite market voices, Truist Wealth Chief Investment Officer Keith Lerner, did just about this, telling clients in a note that measured cash deployment is warranted. His wealth advisors speak for. Don't be afraid of the stock market. Torsten Slope, chief economist at Apollo, argued the market's reaction to the U.S.-Iran conflict is an overreaction. And that's that normalcy bias right there. He said, markets are overreacting to what will likely be a 46-week period of volatility, which will ultimately result in 50 years of stability in oil market supply chains and geopolitics slow road. Well, this guy is dead wrong, because we don't got 50 years in Babylon, man. All right? In his view, inflation will be temporary, rates will head lower, and the AI tailwind for the U.S. economy won't be taken off course by this conflict. And that's that, Psalms 49 and 11, their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, man. And that's your typical Babylonian. You're too proud to admit their reality. oh, it's gonna be fine. We're gonna get through this. This happens. Right? That's that normalcy bias, man. Everything burning down around you, and you want to sit here and say, yeah, you know, this is normal, man. You know, everything's gonna get back on course soon. But that's that wishful thinking of your average Babylonian, because they love Babylon, and they're so proud they don't see this place going down. They don't think America can get touched, but the Lord is already touching this place, man. And this war is not gonna die down. Just so everyone knows, this war is not gonna die down. All right. Matter of fact, I'll segue. This is from the South Dakota Searchlight.com. It says, Iran war not going well. Strategically, former NATO commander tells South Dakota audience. Okay, it says Sioux Falls, which I think that's somewhere in either North Dakota, South Dakota. Well, South Dakota, right? It says former NATO Supreme Allied Commander James Stavridis told an audience Thursday evening at Augustana University that the war with Iran is not going well. Strategically, and America's leaders are stretched too thin with conflicts around the globe. Yeah, like the Lord said, thou art despised among the heathen. I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. Like it says in the book of Obadiah, and I believe it also says in the book of Jeremiah, talking about Babylon the Great, man. And that was just like what happened with ancient Rome, which is the modern day Roman Empire coming back through the NATO and the EU. Rome spread itself too thin, you know, trying to get in everybody else's country, trying to rule over all these different territories and nations. And what happened? They spread themselves too thin, man. Okay. This is Stavridis also described Ukraine as a grinding war, likely headed toward a disappointing settlement. China as a long-term strategic test, and Venezuela as a place where the recent U.S. removal of the country's dictator was strategically risky, but could produce an opening for democratic reforms. With its involvement in those and other international matters at the same time, Stavridis said, the Trump administration has created a bandwidth problem for the few people President Donald Trump has entrusted to handle each situation. It's too much, and they don't have the professional support that they need, Stavridis said. Stavridis was the longest-serving combatant commander in recent U.S. history. He is a retired four-star U.S. Navy admiral who oversaw operations in Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, the Balkans, and counter-piracy efforts off the coast of Africa. He also led operations across Latin America. Stavridis was the featured speaker for the Augustana University at the Elam Center Athletic Arena. Iran, we're a month into it, Stavridis said of the war against Iran. How's it going? It's not going well, in my view. Stavridis said the war has gone better militarily than strategically. He said U.S. strikes have been effective at hitting their targets with 4 goals in mind: snip the nuclear capability, beat down the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, take out the Iranian Navy, and take out the ballistic missiles. Our strikes are very effective and we're quite good at this, he said. Aside from fatal errors, including a Tomahawk missile that hit an Iranian elementary school adjacent to a military base. That was not a fatal error. But strategically, well, I mean, it was technically a fatal error, right? Because it was fatal, but that was intentional, man. It says, but strategically, how's it going? He said, not very well. Stavridis said the military success has not resolved the larger problem. Iran still has ways to impose pain, such as controlling the Strait of Hormuz by attacking oil and gas shipments passing through it, that has driven oil prices higher. And the Trump administration is trying to get out of this, Stavridis said. They're trying to stand down. They want to find a solution. Right, Iran has the world on its knees right now, man. Because a lot of nations are being crippled due to this war going on. And who are they going to blame? The small hats and America, which further will lead to people hating this place, man. All right? But Stavridis said Trump cannot end the war by declaring victory and walking away. because you may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you, meaning both sides must agree to stop launching attacks for a war to end. Stavridis said his best guess is that there is a 70% chance the war ends by the U.S. promising to stop the bombing, Iran releasing its grip on the Strait of Hormuz, and both sides leaving Iran's efforts to build nuclear weapons to be addressed later. That would be sufficient for Trump to declare a win, Stavridis said. He'll say it's the greatest victory in military history, whatever, he added, to which the audience erupted in laughter and applause. He added that the conflict is costing the U.S. about $2 billion a day. Stavridis said there's a 30% chance of a prolonged war. Stavridis said in that scenario, Iran would keep pressuring global energy markets and activate terror networks through the Middle East, Europe, and the United States. He said putting boots on the ground in Iran would be a mistake that would increase the likelihood that the war escalates and continues, which the U.S. has already put that in motion. You know, Lord willing, we're going to get an article on that next. It says, for that, you need a big plan, a big strategy, he said. They have neither. Then he touches on Ukraine, China, Venezuela, which I'll read through it. It says Ukraine. Stavridis said Ukraine has survived because of its own fighting spirit against Russia's invasion, reinforced by Western weapons, sanctions on Russia, and NATO's backing. It's really the war of Putin's ego, he said, of Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. You can forget this idea that he purports of history's destiny in Ukraine has always been part of Mother Russia and the Rodina, Stavridis said, referencing a Russian term for the homeland. That's a crock. He said what Putin wants is the country's natural resources. Stavridis is pessimistic about clean Ukrainian victory. He said Russia controls 20% of Ukraine's territory, having invaded from the east, and an end to the war will likely include Ukraine giving up that land, and I hate it. Though Stavridis added that Ukraine would likely join NATO shortly after. And believe me, we want them in NATO, he said, to which the audience gained applauded. Well, if you want them in NATO so bad, why are they not there now, in a time when they need NATO the most? Because they're afraid to go to war with Russia. That's really what it is. Because with NATO, if one goes to war, all goes to war. Okay, but these other nations, they don't want no smoke with Russia, man, because they know Russia coming with that pressure, and Russia always, and Russia's coming through with the missiles too. And they're trying to, leave off from World War III as much as they can. But it's inevitable. All right, it says Stavridis said negotiations could come soon, given that Russia and Ukraine are both burning through troops. A lot of people dying. Stavridis added that Putin wants desperately to build an alliance with China, and he's kind of getting there. Then he touches on China. Stavridis said U.S. tensions with China span trade, cyber attacks, threats to Taiwan's independence, and China's militarization of the South China Sea, including its buildup of artificial islands that function like mini bases. Stavridis said Taiwan must become a porcupine, meaning well-armed and hard to conquer, to deter China from invading. He said Taiwan's military lacks the modern weapons it needs. But Stavridis said he does not see a U.S. military conflict with China as inevitable, which it will be. Instead, he suggested the goal should be competition without tipping into a war. I think we'll probably get there, he said, of that balance. But you won't. Then he touched on Venezuela. It says, Stavridis said the U.S. operation that removed the former Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro was military impressive, but that the harder and more important test is what comes next. You can debate the legality of it or the strategy of it, but as a military operation, quite extraordinary, he said. Stavridis said removing Maduro has resulted in a shall we say cooperative regime. Yeah, because that's what it was all about. It's all about America getting down there to have control of the resources down there in Venezuela, like the oil, And it's funny because how did this happen before, Babylon went to war with Iran? Could it be that they anticipated Iran to block off the Strait of Hormuz, so they knew that it was going to crush their oil supplies? Who knows? Only the Lord knows, right? But think about it, though. Just throwing that out there, right? Of course, I'm speculating, Man, these devils, they thwarted Venezuela in advance. And Trump was boasting about, yeah, we're going to take over the resources, we're going to take over the gold, take over the oil, you know, because they're known for a lot of resources down there in South America. You know, and then look, months down the line, you got this conflict going on with Iran, and the oil reserves are being crushed. And here it is, Babylonians are suffering for it. But the thing about it is, they were talking about creating all these different oil companies down in Venezuela after they removed Maduro out of there, man. So what's really going on? You know, here it is, the Babylonian citizen got to suffer as far as the oil prices, but motherfuckers got that oil, best believe that. And the Strait of Hormuz, don't get me wrong, they, you know, according to statistics, they hold about 20+% of the world's oil reserve. So my nigga, where the fuck is that other 80% at? You know what I'm saying? But once again, they'll throw the war in your face. They'll throw the Strait of Hormuz in your face. They'll throw all these different things in your face and say, yes, this is why oil prices are soaring through sky high. But really, the elites are trying to bring down that global reset, man. You know, and it's the perfect crisis. Of course, you're going to have somebody say, well, you know, they hold 20% of the oil, but you know, that's the oil that, you know, motherfuckers always got a logical reason why, right? It says, Stavridis said, so I'm going to skip down. It says, Stavridis said, removing Maduro has resulted in a, shall we say, cooperative regime. Yeah, nigga, because America thwarted it and put their own puppet. You know, it says he suggests that the best case scenario is a transition that leads towards free and fair elections. And then you have the opportunity to really flip the table in Latin America. He said it's not a terrible outcome, right? Because that's what Esau does. He plots on lands, their resources. That's the devil for you, man. That's the devil for you. You know? That's how Esau Edom moves. But enough on that. Before we get there, let's get to the other one with the I'll read this one, right? Because it's relevant. It says a new oil shock is mounting, and the next few weeks of war will be decisive for the economy. So this war, you know, it is affecting the economy, absolutely, but, you know, this devil, he likes to come with pretense. It says the clock is ticking on the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran, and does not the scripture say how the least of the flock shall draw them out? Like it says in the book of Jeremiah, who is the least of the flock responsible for drawing them out? Amalek is brought America into this Third World War, and Amalek is going to be the reason why, is going to be a part of the reason why America gets destroyed. Jeremiah 49:20. Therefore hear the counsel of the Lord that he had taken against Edom, and his purposes that he had purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. That's it. That's it, man. He's gonna make their habitation desolate. And look at the effect that it's already having now, man. How much more when the missiles hit this place? It says the emerging view from oil industry executives and analysis is that the economic market fallout from the war could escalate sharply if the Strait of Hormuz isn't reopened within roughly the next 1 to 3 weeks. I'm going to show you how much of a punk ass nigga these niggas are, man. You have 48 hours to open up the Strait of Hormuz, then you open up to 1 week, 1 to 3 weeks, man. I'm going to show you Babylon is not the authority anymore. You know? Some other nations, they ain't trying to hear that shit. They don't give a fuck what Babylon got to say. And the thing about Iran is that they don't want peace. They don't want peace. They don't want peace. So you thinking that they're going to respond within those 1 to 3 weeks? Yeah, they're going to respond, all right. They're going to respond with more war, more chaos. Okay? More lockdowns. Them Iranians, they're fed up with Amalek and America, man. Because they've been dealing with this devil for decades. They've been dealing with the shit end of the stick of dealing with America and Amalek for decades, man. That's why they constantly kept enriching their uranium. Because they was like, okay, we're going to get right for you niggas because we know the day is going to come where we're going to have to, go to war, man. And sure enough, this is that time. Okay? This is that time, man. This war is not gonna die down. You know, now we understand that America's not gonna be destroyed till the CHIP gets implemented, but this war is not gonna die down. You know, and it says, and we know according to biblical prophecy that Iran is gonna be involved with America's obliteration. And what I mean by that is, Iran is gonna be involved when America gets hit by ICBM nuclear missiles, man. So whether that happens this year, the next year, you know, tomorrow, of course not tomorrow, right? Because the CHIP ain't implemented. I'm just being facetious. We know Iran's going to have a hand in America's destruction. So this is on the horizon, man. Look, they're already at war, okay? It says, even then, enough damage may have been done already to leave energy and many other prices higher for longer. These risks haven't been clearly reflected in some widely followed markets, including stocks, broadly in the benchmark Brent crude price. Stopgap measures to soften the blow of the oil cutoff have kept crude prices relatively low in the U.S. and European markets, but when those measures lose their effectiveness in early to mid-April, analysis warn there will be little the U.S. or other governments can do to keep energy prices from rising dramatically. Iran has attacked civilian ships and energy infrastructure in its neighborhood, causing traffic in the narrow Strait of Hormuz to fall and stand still. Roughly 20% of global supply normally moves through the approximately 100-mile waterway which borders Iran. Some oil has been rerouted through pipelines, but they can carry only so much. The U.S. and others are releasing 400 million barrels of oil from strategic reserves. Whoa. Where them strategic reserves coming from? Venezuela, right? Maybe so. It says the biggest release on record, and the U.S. has temporarily lifted sanctions on some Russian and Iranian oil to give the market breathing room. And so, yeah, you can follow up with that on endtimeheadlines.org. This is from March 28, 2026. Interesting, man. Very interesting. And once again, let no good crisis go to waste, right? Let me go ahead and read this Al Jazeera link. It's from Al Jazeera. Breaking news, Yemen Houthis launched a second missile attack on Israel. This shit ain't dying down. Alright, so it says from March 25th, 2026, it says Philippines president declares energy emergency as impact of Iran war felt. So they're using this war to bring the squeeze on all the earth, man. You know, and what's going to be the ultimate saving grace to this man's wicked system, right? Absolutely nothing. But the false messiah of Esau's system is going to be this new world order. And the false messiah of currency of this man's system is going to be the RFID chip, which is the mark of the beast. You ain't going to be able to buy, sell, unless you have that CHIP. And they're going to bring more restrictions, man. You know? As we'll get into it, especially because of what's going on with this war. And even look at what's going on over there with the TSA is now ICE agents, man. You know, it's like more restrictions are coming. And somebody brought this out, I think it was the elder. He posted it on his page saying that when you check Project 2025, and I think it's page 159, how it says, for the record, was the TSA crisis manufactured? Take a look at Project 2025, page 159. Yeah, and I'm going to leave it at that. And then you go ahead and read it for yourself, because it's public record. All you have to do is type in Project 2025, open up the PDF, scroll down to page 159, read it and weep. So there's going to be way more restrictions and everything going on. And a lot of this is going to be in the name of, the war going on with Iran, which justifies them to be scarce with the resources and be scarce with, a lot of other things, man. Because of the war. And war is propaganda, And off of propaganda alone, you can control the minds of the people. So it says Philippine president declares an energy emergency as impact of Iran war felt. All right. It says Transport Union says the emergency declaration has a superficial band-aid that does not address the root cause of the fuel crisis. So it says Philippines declare national emergency as supplies dwindle. It says Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has declared a national energy emergency in response to the U.S.-Israel war on Iran and what he called the imminent danger posed to the country's energy supply. The emergency declaration on Tuesday came as Philippine transport workers, commuters, and consumer groups plan to hold a 2-day strike from Thursday to protest the increase in fuel prices and what they say is the Marcos administration's failure to swiftly respond. The declaration of a state of national energy emergency will enable the government to implement responsive and coordinated measures under existing laws to address the risks posed by disruptions in the global energy supply and the domestic economy, Marcos Jr. said. As part of the emergency response, a committee has been formed to ensure the orderly movement, supply, distribution, and availability of fuel, food, medicine, agricultural products, and other essential goods, he said. The emergency declaration, which will remain in force for 1 year, authorizes the government to procure fuel and petroleum products to ensure timely and sufficient supply, and if necessary, pay part of the contract amount in advance. Authorities are also empowered to take action against the hoarding, profiteering, and manipulation of petroleum product supplies. Earlier on Tuesday, Secretary of Energy Sharon Garin told a news briefing that the country still had about 45 days of fuel supply based on current consumption levels. Garin said the government was working to procure 1 million barrels of oil from countries within and outside Southeast Asia to build its buffer stock, but there will likely be uncertainties in reaching this level. Philippine ambassador to the U.S., Jose Manuel Romualdez, told the Reuters news agency that the Manila was working with Washington to secure exemptions that would allow for the purchase of oil from countries under U.S. sanctions. All operations are being considered, the ambassador said in response to whether Iranian and Venezuelan oil was part of the talks with the U.S. But transport unions and Philippine senators have criticized the government's response to the crisis, accusing the Marcos administration of lacking a unified and coordinated action to mitigate the fallout from the surge in oil prices. And what's this, a small inkling of? And I ain't gonna say small, but, what is this leading towards? They should not regard their kings nor princes, man. They might fuck around and throw a coup, because if the people are suffering and they're blaming it on the president or the, what's this guy's title? Forgive me. Yeah, president, okay? Then what are they gonna do, man? They might throw a coup and rise up and get him out of office. And, maybe Babylon might put in their own little puppet in the Philippines. Once again, speculating. But nonetheless, the people are fed up, man. And they're blaming their president for this oil crisis that's going on. And it says, Piston, a Federation of Public Transport Associations, described the declaration of a national emergency as a superficial band-aid that deliberately ignores the structural roots of the fuel crisis. If the government genuinely intends to protect transport workers and commuters from the geopolitical crisis, it would immediately suspend the excise tax and value-added tax on petroleum products to drastically lower prices overnight. Piston said in a statement on Tuesday, furthermore, tasking the Department of Energy to merely monitor profiteering is a toothless gesture as long as multinational oil cartels remain legally empowered to dictate extortionate pump prices at will. Yep. Renato Reyes Jr. of the Progressive Civil Society Coalition in Banyan said the declaration does not address the basic problem of runaway oil prices and their effects on the mass transport system and other sectors in the country. It does not mention removing or suspending oil taxes, which are the core of the people's demands. So they ain't trying to, the people are like, yo, do this. And, the leadership is like, nah. Why? Because they take marching orders, man. Okay? And a lot of motherfuckers get bonuses too. You think they're gonna let you fuck with their bonus for your sake? You know, most of these so-called leaders of these countries don't really give a fuck about their nation. Don't really give a fuck about their people. Right? They're just in a position of power and they abusing it. It says, but little do they know that doing right by the people is what keeps you in power. All right? It says it does not, it says, where are the needed price controls? As part of the government's mitigation measures, students and workers in some sites are being given free access to bus rides, and the government has started to provide a $5,000 or 5,000 peso, which is according to 83 US dollars, subsidy to motorcycle taxi drivers and other public transport workers nationwide to help them cope with soaring gasoline and diesel prices. So they're trying to come out of pocket, help them out, right? Well, see, in Babylon the Great, they're getting ready to put restrictions on people as far as their driving capability. It's about to get bad. All right. And then, you know, End Time Headlines, they posted this article a few days ago going into the same thing, how they made a state of emergency over the Iran conflict. That was from the 24th of March, you know. Right. Anyway, that's cool off that. Let's get this article right here. It says, End Time Headlines, hundreds of gas stations run dry in Australia as Hormuz shock exposes energy security failure. So even in Australia, they're feeling it. Okay, and that's crazy. This picture was generated by AI. It actually looks kind of realistic. But you can tell it's AI, low-key, because it look a little too realistic. It says Australia's weird obsession with green energy compounded by a lack of urgency regarding proper energy security has now collided with the worst energy crisis the world has ever seen. That is from End Time Headlines. The title says, hundreds of gas stations run dry in Australia as Hormuz shock exposes energy security failures. It says a country heavily dependent on imported refined petroleum products, many of which transit the Strait of Hormuz, has reached the fourth week of the U.S.-Iran war, but with a full-blown fuel supply shock now underway and hundreds of gas stations across the country running dry, Energy Minister Chris Bowen warned federal parliament on Monday that more than 109 gas stations in Victoria had run out of at least one grade of gas. He said 47 outlets in Queensland had no diesel, 32 had no regular unleaded, and 37 stations in New South Wales has completely run out of fuel. Motherfuckers going through it. Earlier, NSW Premier Chris Minns warned that 105 gas stations across his state had completely run out of diesel. The Guardian noted that the energy minister did not disclose how many gas stations in Western Australia and the Northern Territory, South Australia, and Tasmania had run out of fuel. Those could possibly be strategic locations. On Sunday, Bowen said that 6 tankers from Malaysia, Singapore, and South Korea that had been expected to unload refined petroleum products next month were canceled or deferred. He told local outlet ABC TV that the federal government is urgently working to replace those fuel cargoes. So what's really going on, man? What's really going on? Because, hey, you need gas to get to and fro, in order to get to work, in order, to go do your business, go to the grocery store, right? You tell most of these Babylonians to go on a walk, and they're like, what? Walk? To them, they take it as an abomination. Right? Tell a motherfucker, oh, go ride a bike. No, I ain't gonna ride a bike. What? So these Babylonians, man, they need their cars. And the way a lot of things are set up in Babylon, a lot of things are far away, where you do need to commute by car. And sometimes even with car, it's far. So walking is technically healthy. It's good for your health, but it's not an efficient form of transportation. Because, it takes shit for you, in order for you to walk 3 miles down the street, that how long of a walk is that? About an hour, at minimum, depending on how fast you're walking. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what are you really going to accomplish in a day? Having to walk everywhere. That's why back in the scriptures, when they used to walk everywhere, it said, what? A day's journey. having to walk an entire day just to get to certain cities, certain places, man. It be like that. It be like that. All right. It says former BP executive warns to prepare for driving restrictions and 4-day working weeks as Iran crisis deepens. Let's get into this because that's heavy right there. That means they're getting ready to reduce people's driving restrictions. Okay, they're getting ready to reduce people's driving allowances and put restrictions on their driving. A man shall desire to go into his city and shall not be able. For because of their pride, their houses shall be troubled, the city shall be, let's get the precept. And how are they going to track this? How are they going to know, oh, you're driving above your limit? You know, there's a lot of things coming down the pipeline. I guess they might explain it in the article. We'll see. We'll see. 2 Ezra chapter 15 and verse 17. A man shall desire to go into his city and shall not be able, for because of their pride the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor. And you see that now. Motherfucking, you go to, you eat out, you stand in line, the motherfucker standing behind you got to stand right up on you. Like, nigga, you're gonna get your food. Chill out. You know? But that just goes to show you how much of a fucking brute beast these Babylonians are, man. Okay? You know, and we're in a green tree, and they already don't have no fucking couth. You know? No sense of decency or respect. Yeah, ata. No bratupsy, right? Right? Ain't got no bratupsy, according to Benjamin. Meaning they ain't fucking got no home training. You know? Nobody brought them up properly. Right? Motherfuckers just on some brute beast. Just following the flesh. You know, head first. And willing to look stupid as hell, you know, by following the flesh. Don't get me wrong, of course we gotta eat our food, but goddamn, my nigga, you gotta stand 3 inches from behind me. You gonna get your food, man. You gonna be alright. You the last motherfucker in line and you wanna stand up right up on somebody, man. These Babylonians gotta go. Is all they know is what they want, what their flesh want. They don't give a fuck about nobody else, no nothing else, man. And these motherfuckers are aggressive out here. And they will take your shit. They will take your shit. You ain't looking, you unattended, they will take your shit, man. Motherfuckers got spirits on them. They got demons on them, man. Don't nobody respect boundaries. That's why they about to get invaded. That's why the Lord about to go on their shit. 2 Ezra chapter 15, verse 19. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of lack of bread and for great tribulation. So how much more when all this shit really start to feel the squeeze, man? These motherfuckers, they're going to be acting like animals out here. It's going to be the purge out here, man. Whether you want to believe it or not, that's what it is. This is from endtimeheadlines.org. Former BP executive, BP, the gas station, right? The gas company, the oil company. Executive warns to prepare for driving restrictions and 4-day working weeks as Iran crisis deepens. And see, this right here, I have so many questions. Because don't get me wrong, I would love to work one less day out the week. But motherfucker, how are people going to get their daily bread? Because most of the people have to divide it up to a 5-day work week in order to, at least work 40 hours. So what's going to happen? People going to have to start working 2 hours extra, 10-hour work weeks to get 40-hour work week, right? They're going to have to start increasing pay. What's going on, right? Let's read about it. A former oil company executive says, and that's why we just waiting for the Lord to shut this bitch down, man. Or, we just waiting for y'all, but I'm trying to shut this bitch down. And that's exactly what he's doing. Because we're reading about it right now as we speak, man. But like the Lord said, little by little, he was going to dispossess these nations from before us, man. It says, a former oil company executive says ministers should be considering enforcing driving restrictions amid an impending fuel supply crisis. How the fuck? You just thwarted one of the largest oil reserves in the entire world through Venezuela, and the world going through a fuel supply crisis. What's really going on? It says Nick Butler, former BP head of strategy and policy advisor, told XPM Gordon Brown, said limiting drivers to alternate days based on their vehicle's registration number would be one measure. That's crazy work. Another would be for employers to allow an extra day off for staff every week to reduce commuter traffic. He urged the government to reassure people by telling them what was going to happen if the Iran war was dragged on. So you gotta imagine how much of this is gonna reshape society from people having one extra day off. Don't get me wrong, it's nice for the workers, right? But what about the people who need the service? Imagine you like to go to motherfucking, the grocery store every Saturday when you're off, but they closed. Your whole week thrown off, man. And of course, okay, well, we'll just have to reschedule, right? But at the end of the day, it just shows you how much and that's just one small example. What about certain people, they don't have a Saturday to reschedule or a Monday to reschedule because they got to get their asses to work. You know what I'm saying? So this is about to really, if they do go through with this, right? Once again, we speculating. It's about to really reshape society. And this goes to show you how fragile this man's grid is. The Lord's showing you how fragile Esau Edom's system is, man. It seems like it's so sophisticated. It seems like it's so well put together. But this shit fragile as fuck. Take away one chess piece off the board and these motherfuckers is scrambling. And we ain't even hit the all-time peak of Jacob's trouble, man. So, hey, come on, man. It's about to get bad out here. It says he urged the government to reassure people by telling them what was going to happen if the Iran war dragged on. If supplies are cut by 20%, then someone is using 20% less, he said. The government has to protect the key sectors of the economy: food, supply, health, service, schools, and so on. And then it has to work out how it's going to manage the market for the rest of us. I don't think they can just leave it to a free-for-all, which will be a chaotic and very regressive and unfair to those of limited ability to pay. I don't think it's going to be ration books, which it will be. It will be. And before I read on, let me read the precept to back it up. 2nd Ezra, chapter 6, and verse 22. And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown, and the full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. And what are they going to start doing? Rationing. Just like back in 2020 with the C Ragamuffin. Like the beloved Elder Apostle Harvey saying, the C Ragamuffin, right? They were rationing goods at the grocery store, at these different supply chains. You only allowed to get, 2 cases of water at most? If you were lucky, right? Motherfuckers was fighting over toilet paper, man. Toilet paper. Stabbing each other up for toilet paper, man. So if they was fighting about toilet paper, what the hell you gonna think they gonna do when they start rationing the food, man? Okay? It says, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying toilet paper is not a necessity. Of course, it's a necessity. But goddamn. These Babylonians are animals, bro. Animals. Like, and I always quote that movie scene. That movie scene really resonates with my spirit because it's so true. It shows you human nature in a nutshell. And I'm talking about the movie scene with The Dark Knight, with Joker being played by Heath Ledger. He said, don't talk like them. You're not one of them. He's like, you're a freak, just like me. He said, right now they need you, but as soon as they don't, they'll cast you out like a leper. He said, their morals, their code. He said it's a bad joke, man. He said it's dropped at the first sign of trouble. He said these civilized people, he said they'll eat each other. Okay? He said when the chips are down, they'll eat each other, man. He was prophesying. He said, I'm not crazy. I'm just ahead of the curve. And don't get it twisted. You got a lot of motherfuckers who are functioning in society right now who got that same type of Joker demon on them. Who are bugged out of their mind, yet they show up to work every day. They get in their car, they put gas in their car, they go to the grocery store. But you look at these motherfuckers and they are bugged out. They got demons on them, man. But they're a functioning demonic possession. They clock in at work, clock out. They cook, they clean. But they got spirits on them, man. And they are waiting for the day when they could be a demon with no cops around. You have plenty of people in society like that right now. I'm sure you ask 10 out of every 10 people, I damn near want to say you have 8 motherfuckers who say, yeah, if society was to be destroyed, I got a few people on my list. What's that tell you about the state of this place that we live in, man? Okay. It says, I don't think it's going to be ration books. A lot of countries around the world are now beginning to look at how to gently reduce consumption. Driving alternate days for different registration numbers, having an extra days holiday a week. That's what some countries in the Far East are doing. All right, so that's enough on that article right there. Once again, these Babylonians with their wishful thinking. But this is a former BP executive warning to prepare for driver's restrictions. How he know? Right? Because these motherfuckers at the top, they all rub hands. They all play golf. They all fucking rub elbows together is what I meant to say, right? They all play golf together. They all fucking do their rituals together. You name it, man. And they're all in cahoots. And then they have one mediator company that's a broker for all their other major companies, man. Even though they seem like competition, though, right? Right? This man's system's going down. Fuck this place. The Wadi Abashimel Shai. Let's see. Before we segue, it says another end time headlines article from the 24th of March, 2026. Pentagon prepares to send another 3,000 troops to Middle East. Yeah, and didn't they just increase the draft age into the 40s? You got a lot of men who are in their 40s, they still can move a little bit. But you in your 40s, you in the military, you 20 years short of being 60, man. It's like, hey, they're getting desperate. And nothing wrong with being 40 years old. I'm not knocking a man who's 40 years old, There's a lot of men who are fucking 40 years old and put a young man to shame. Plenty of them. I've seen plenty of them. Because during that time frame, men were built different, So there's a lot of men who are 40, 50, even some men who are 60 who will put a young man to shame in modern day time because most young niggas are fucking soft, weak as hell, smoking vapes, and, cracked out on nicotine, man. Okay? Smoking weed and shit. Drinking every weekend. Fucking pussy whipped. Simping. And you supposed to be a young man. You at your peak of strength. And you spending all your strength to destroy your body by partaking in degenerate practices and living like a goddamn heathen. Living a life of hedonism. 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 Right? Hedonistic lifestyle. So, a lot of these young niggas, man, they ain't trying to go to war. And you got me fucked up too because shit, I'm not gonna be joining the military to fight against Yahushua. That don't make no goddamn sense to me. Give a fuck about all that. But at the end of the day, this is our reality. Why? Because we are in a time of war. Joel the 3rd chapter. Wake up the mighty men. Prepare for war. Right? The Lord raising up the Gentiles. We're in a time of war. How they gotta, and then like Scripture say, the mighty men of Babylon have foreborn to fight. A lot of these niggas, they ain't trying to fight for America, man. They don't give a fuck about this place. Rightfully so. Joel chapter 3, verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. And we see that right now with Iran. Because they were weaker than America. And now, look, they got America on their knees. All right? Talk about America. Talking about, oh, you got 1 to 3 weeks. Fuck out of here. They ain't trying to hear that shit. It says the Pentagon is preparing to deploy about 3,000 troops from the Army's 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East, adding to the thousands of Marines already headed to the region to assist with operations in Iran. No decisions have been made for troops to enter the country, according to 2 defense officials who confirmed the planned deployment. But the buildup of troops is a drastic escalation in the U.S.-Israel war against the Iranian regime and heightens the possibility that American service members will go into Iran. The 82nd as a quick reaction force that can deploy around the world within 18 hours, but it is not clear if that division will head to the region. The troop increase comes a month into U.S. military airstrikes against Iranian military forces and infrastructure, and amid spiraling gas prices as Iranian officials block access to the Strait of Hormuz, through which about a fifth of the world's oil passes. U.S. Central Command, which oversees the effort, said Tuesday that U.S. aircraft and missile attacks have destroyed more than 9,000 military targets inside Iran since the attack started on February 28th. Woo! Okay. So, they knee deep in the shit, man. They ain't trying to regress. Because really what America wants to do is put an end to Iran, but they know they can't because Iran coming with that pressure. And Iran have Bakativ, according to Benjamin, right? Bakativ. They got backup. Who they got backup with? Russia. Russia got backup with many other nations, man. And Iran also has backup with some of them other nations too. Like them Islam nations, man. Okay? So, and that's just to say the least. They got more allies. I'm not mentioning them, all of them, but, those are 2 major allies that they got on their side. Who the fuck America got? Israel? America don't even really got the NATO, the NATO, because the NATO ain't fucking with America like that, man. Shit, hell, one of the members of the NATO, Turkey, they already doing backdoor deals with Russia, and everybody know it. And Turkey gonna side with Russia when America get destroyed. Mark my words. Why is that? Because it comes straight out of the Bible. Read Ezekiel 38. Mark the Lord's words, man. Military officials have said the strikes targeted Iran's missile launchers, Navy, and its defense industrial base. Strikes have also killed dozens of regime leaderships. So, that's the life on Earth war talk right there. Let's segue to the pestilence. This is from thedailymail.co.uk. This is from March 24th, 2026. It says CDC issues global travel notice as incurable brain bleeding virus reaches America. Woo. Urgent warnings have been issued for travelers to multiple countries over spiraling outbreaks of mosquito-borne disease that can cause brain bleeds. The CDC issued a level 1 global travel advisory after detecting unusual upticks in cases of dengue fever across the world. In particular, the CDC warned of 16 countries where travelers have increased risk contracting the illness and warning them to take precautions to prevent mosquito bites. And motherfucking, you had this nigga Bill Snakes talking about, yeah, we got mosquitoes that we're gonna release in the Everglades through his hell. The CDC said it has identified a higher than expected number of dengue cases among U.S. travelers returning from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bolivia, Colombia, Cook Islands, Cuba, Guyana, Maldives, Mali, Mauritania, New Caledonia, Pakistan, Samoa, Sudan, Timor-Leste, and Vietnam. Health officials urge travelers to wear insect-repellent long-sleeve shirts and pants and long pants when outdoors, and to sleep in air-conditioned rooms or a room with window screens. Dengue fever often causes a asymptomatic infection, meaning it's not going to show up. There's no visible signs that you got it. You know, kind of like with certain STDs. Yeah, you know, you look at a person from the outside, they look normal, but you check their blood, you check the inwards, you know, and they got a STD. It says, but in some patients, it can trigger life-threatening internal bleeding, respiratory distresses, and heart failure. It can also lead to shock and organ failure, especially of the liver, brain, and heart. Patients may also develop dengue shock syndrome, a condition where severe bleeding leads to a rapid drop in blood pressure and cause the body to go into shock. Children under 5 and adults over 65 and pregnant women are considered to be the most at risk from the virus. And who's to say this devil didn't come up with this virus, man? You know? So I'm not going to read all of it. But you could scroll through it in your own time. This is from daily.co.uk mail. Okay. And they got a little map here. But let's segue. End time headlines. New highly mutated COVID variant called cicada is spreading in the U.S. Now, let's take a look at this, right? Because I don't know if brothers and sisters can relate, but there was definitely something going around within this past month, man. The other day, it was like maybe 2 weeks ago. Man, I was sick as a dog. Man, I ain't want to move. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to drink. I just literally wanted to sit there and just lay down. And I had a through-ass cough, coughing up phlegm. I had like a 103 fever. And fucking, it got so bad to the point where there was a point of time where I was at the gas station trying to pump gas, and I couldn't even stand up. I fell through. You know, it was bad. It was bad, bro. And then my Eve caught the same shit that I caught, and she was sick for like 3 weeks. I was sick for like a couple days, you know, and then I had like the lingering symptoms. But my Eve was like sick for like 3 weeks, man, going through it. So let's read about it. It says BA.3.2, a heavily mutated new COVID-19 variant, which may be better able to escape immunity from vaccines or prior infection, is now spreading in the United States. The Lord bringing that pestilence. The Lord said he was going to bring pestilence. All right, this is how we know we're at the end. Matthew 24:7. I'm going to start at verse 3. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And Yahushua answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Mashiach, and shall deceive many. And ye shall have wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Okay, so Yahushua prophesied of these things, man. These things are written in the scriptures. All right, it says, BA.3.2, a heavily mutated new COVID-19 variant, which may be better to escape immunity from vaccines or prior infection, is now spreading in the United States. Although COVID cases are currently low nationally, the BA.3.2 strain is gaining traction around the globe. The BA.3.2, aka cicada, is emerged over a year ago and slowly simmered until last fall, when it started ramping up in several countries, including the U.S. As of February 11th, the BA.3.2 has been detected in at least 25 states. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said. Perhaps more concerning is the variant's slew of genetic changes in its spike protein, which set it apart from other variants circulating. Andrew Pickos said. Andrew Pickos, PhD, a virologist at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, tells Today.com. The SARS-CoV-2 virus mutates constantly as it spreads, which leads to the emergence of new variants. Most of the strains spreading right now are closely related, with slight genetic differences, but the BA.32 or 32 stands out according to experts. It has a lot of mutations that may cause it to look different to your immune system. Pescod says these have the potential to reduce protection from a previous infection or vaccination, according to a new study published in the CDC's latest morbidity and mortality weekly report. So he's saying this thing it targets your immune system, man. Hey, this man is the devil. This man is the devil. This man is the devil for real, though. Oh, it's mutated. Nigga, that's another way of saying here's a new strain that we got based off the C19 because they didn't hit hard enough the first time. Because really, when you think about it, the C19, if you did catch COVID, that shit was a motherfucker. Especially not being able to taste and smell. You know, it's like, goddamn, what's the point of me even eating? I can't taste this shit. That shit was frustrating. But at the end of the day, you know, how much of an effect did it really play on thinning the herd? Put it like that. Right? How many cattle got removed from the herd because of the C19? You know, not too much. I'm not saying nobody died from it, but the toll wasn't as high as they wanted it to be. And then on top of that, the JAB really took out more. You know, the JAB really took out more lives than the C19 did. That they were trying to make such an uproar about. You know, because the C19 is not a new virus. By any ways, the JAB put in more work than the C19 itself. But now they was like, okay, just like that devil Bill Snake said, they didn't take the first lockdown serious, but they'll definitely take the second one serious. Motherfucker, you know, isn't it supposed to be you don't want to lock down, right? But no, they do want to lock down because they want to control the people. They want total control. They don't want anybody to be autonomous in Babylon the Great. That's why they give you a hard time if you're a farmer, you grow your own crops. And all these different farming lands was burning down recently, man. Acres and acres burnt down. All right. You know, a lot of farmers struggling, a lot of farmers getting bought out. Why? Because Esau wants the total supply control. Because if you control a nation's food, you can control a nation. Right? And that was in Nebraska. Okay? But it says, it says BA.32, a heavily mutated new COVID variant, which may be better able to escape immunity from vaccines prior infections now spread in the United States. We read about that. Let's skip down. It says these have the potential to, and this is from Today.com, these have the potential to reduce protection from a previous infection or vaccination, according to a new study published by the CDC latest morbidity and mortality weekly report. As a result, the hyper-mutated strain is being closely tracked by public health officials. In December 2025, the World Health Organization classified BA.32 as a variant under monitoring, meaning, we're still working on this one. Right? BA.32 was nicknamed Cicada by T. Ryan Gregory, PhD, a professor of evolutionary biology at the University of Guelph. Or, I don't know how to pronounce that, so forgive me. who's coined other variant name like Stratus and Pyrola or Pyrola, like its namesake insect. BA32 also spent its first years underground before re-emerging as a potential major variant, Gregory tells Today.com. Meaning what? These motherfuckers have been working on this shit for years. C19 was really just a trial run. And it was a trial run for many things. It was a trial run to see how many people they could thin the herd with, how many people they can force compliance with, see which nations are going to be more compliant than others, help them usher in that 5G, right? Because a lot of times, during that time frame, they were pushing that 5G heavy. Now look, nobody questions 5G. Motherfuckers prefer the 5G, right? They ditched the 4G. They said, man, we want that 5G. And now Esau's getting ready to implement the 6G. It was already in the process of it. Okay? And soon 5G gonna be a thing of the past. But that 5G has a lot of negative effects to people's health. But people forgot about that, right? Because why? Because Esau shaped the society slowly but surely. Put that squeeze. Now you got 5G everywhere, man. And then you have like internet with like 5G wireless internet, right? Like with AT&T and T-Mobile, they got their wireless based internet. You got other motherfuckers too, but one of the top ones is T-Mobile. And a lot of the areas that T-Mobile has for their 5G internet, those are the Jake areas, man. Those are the areas where Jake be at, where all them 5G towers and all them cellular towers be at. And you got to think about it. And it's convenient, right? For the sake of you having Wi-Fi for your home to cover your basic needs. But if you think about it, you just have a 5G radiation box just sitting right dead smack in the middle of your fucking house, just radiating all day, all night. It's unlimited. There's no data caps. So you just running that shit up every day. Your shit getting fried, cooked. Straight up 5G radiation, round the clock, man. And it's like, yeah, it's convenient for the internet's sake, but goddamn, we need to get out this place, man. We need to get out this place. We need to get out this place. And they making it the most affordable thing. Out of all their competitors, T-Mobile is making it the most affordable, man. They give you no money down, first 15 days free, and at most you're going to be paying $70, and that's a 5-year price guarantee for one of their better products on that 5G service. So if you think about it, most people can afford that. And on the low end, you paying $35, depending on, if you got phone service with them. So Wi-Fi ranging from $35 to $70 for a 5-year price guarantee. Most people are willing to pay that. So T-Mobile is sending these things off, man, where them motherfuckers is going out of stock. Because motherfuckers need their internet. So you got to think about it. Think about how much radiation everybody's home's getting hit with that 5G internet, man. Getting fried. And then let alone AT&T's got their own version of it too. And various other companies, man. So, hey, man, it's getting real. It's getting real. It says, what is the new COVID variant BA32? BA32. BA32 was first identified in November 2024 in South Africa. It's a descendant of BA3, an Omicron subvariant that emerged into 2022, which was another fucking mutated virus that Esau created. And I remember when there was talking about the Omicron, motherfuckers was scared as hell. Then that died down, and now look, you got the BA32, right? Because they said the Omicron was a variant of the C19, and they said, oh, it's way worse, trying to scare people and shit. And it says that emerged in 2022 and briefly circulated with the BA1 and the BA2, the CDC said. Its ancestor BA3 fizzled out but never disappeared, says Peskov. 2 years and dozens of mutations later, the BA32 emerged. It further branched into two subvariants, BA321 and BA322. Since 2024, the BA32 has moved slowly and quietly, overshadowed by dominant variants like Nimbus and XFG, which all descend from BA2. Last September, BA32 started taking off It was under the radar, replicating until it started to spread more from person to person, says Pescos. BA.32 has 70 to 75 mutations in its spike protein. That's a lot, says Pescos, which set it apart from the JN1 and LP81, the strains targeted by current C19 vaccines. According to the CDC, the BA.32 represents a new lineage that's genetically distinct from the family of variants we've seen in some recent years. We think it might be able to evade a lot of the immunity already in the population, says Pesgod. In the laboratory studies, BA.32 effectively escaped C19 antibodies due to its spike protein changes. The CDC said what's interesting, however, is some of these mutations may actually make the virus bind less well to our cells. So, yes, our immune system may not recognize it, but it doesn't recognize us as well. Dr. Dana Mazo, an infectious diseases physician at NYU Langone Health, tells Today.com. Why is BA.32 resurfacing now? That's unclear, Mazo says. Does the new C variant cause more severe illness? The BA.32 is making people sicker? Fortunately, no. There's no evidence the BA.32 is causing more severe disease or hospitalizations in countries where it's more widespread. Dr. Adolfo Garcia Sastre, director of the Global Health and Emerging Pathogens Institute at Mount Sinai, tells Today.com. Which that could just be a lie. It says it can still cause problems, of course, but it's not more problematic strain than the previous one, says Garcia Sastre. Pesco's adds it looks scary on paper, but it hasn't really made a big impact in terms of disease in most places yet. Goes into a list of where it's spreading. It says it has spread to at least 23 countries and then 25 states: California, Connecticut, Florida, Hawaii, Idaho, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Missouri, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Wyoming. Currently, the BA.32 is not fueling enough cases to be included in the CDC's variant proportion tracker. However, according to the latest WasteView monitor data from the CDC, the BA.32 variant was found in at least 11% of samples nationally during the week ending of March 21st. Data from the Wastewater Scan at Stanford University-run program that tracks diseases also show increasing detections of BA.32 in sewage samples across the country. There are still a lot of unknown questions about how prevalent it is in the U.S. because surveillance has been reduced a lot, Gastry says. So it goes on. It does go on. It's a long article. Okay, here you go. It says, symptoms of the BA.32 are similar to those caused by other variants circulating right now, the experts note. It says, according to the CDC Common C19, symptoms in 2026 include cough, fever, or chills, sore throat, congestion, shortness of breath, loss of smell or taste, fatigue, headache, gastrointestinal symptoms. And those are exact fucking symptoms that I felt, man. All right, it started with a sore throat. I did have a cough. I had a fever, chills. I didn't have much shortness of breath. At a period of time, I did have a loss of smell and taste. It was very brief, though, the Wadi Bashmashai. Most definitely fatigue. Definitely had a headache and gastrointestinal symptoms, man. Okay? So it says symptoms can vary depending on the person, but usually go away on their own with supportive care. And that shit'll put you on your ass, man. And I really think that's probably what the fuck it was. Probably was the fucking BA.32. Bitch ass shit. It says symptoms can vary depending on the person, but usually go away on their own with supportive care. The new variant is still sensitive to the C19 antiviral drugs that we have been developing, so at least those will work, says Garcia Sastre. Alright, so, it goes into it, man. But, there's a lot going on right now through the spirit of power, y'all, Bashmal Shai. And this is life on earth, But Lord willing, lesson was edifying, giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahushua, Ba'asham, HaKakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and others, great Muslim, that were well, peace and blessings to the elected nation Israel. Shalom, Abba, Kwame Sharala.